All right, we're going to take some time and take a look at how to create a form in Dreamweaver. Today I'm working in CC, Creative Cloud. The steps for CS6 are nearly identical. Things may look a little bit different, but the gist is about the same. So I'm just going to create a new HTML document, and I'll go ahead and save as form, just to have something to work in here. Okay, so I've got our workspace right here, and it's just a blank web page. We're in the body section. And so the first thing we're going to do, just because it's easier to do it now than it is to do it later, is we're going to put in a field set, which allows you to put some labeling on your form. So you go up to Insert, go to Form, and you have all these options. In CS6, and actually some of these options are going off the page, I'm noticing from my recording window. Not sure if I can, yep, I can edit that. Okay, kind of. Forgive the floating about. So when I went to Insert, Form, okay, we've got more tools down here. Now in CS6, you're not going to see quite as many of these tools. Some of these options were added with HTML5 and may not be reflected in CS6. But for now, we're going to go all the way down here to Field Set. And it's asking me what I want to call this form. I'm just going to say form because I'm boring. Maybe I'll do form label and say OK. All right, let me adjust my window so we're back to our normal window here. All right, so here's my form label. Now this is not a form. This is a field. This is just the field set. So I hit Enter on the keyboard, and I'm going to go back, and I'm going to insert under form a form. This red box represents the form. So I've got a form inside a field set. Why am I doing that? It's all about the design of the form. I can live without a field set altogether, but if I want it to look a certain way, then I want my form to be inside the field set. All right, so within my form, I'm going to need some inputs. I'm going to need a place for a user to enter some information. So we're going to insert form, and we're going to put in just text. And so what happens here is I get this field. This is a place for the user to enter information. And then I get this text right here that just says text field. And this is a label. So in this case, I'm going to put in first name, as in enter your first name here, right? And then with field selected, notice in my properties box down here, this defaults to the name text field. I want to be more specific. I'm going to call my name. All right, and I don't have a class yet. I'll do that later. Okay, and let me put in just one more or a couple more maybe. We'll do last name. I just hit enter enter after this field set, and so that makes it a paragraph. And you'll see if we look at the code that there's now p tags around each one of these lines. Okay, so I put in last name. Actually, I shouldn't have done that. Let me get rid of that. And I'm going to insert form text. We're going to change this one to last name, colon. It's already there. And then with this field set highlighted, I'm going to change this name to last name. All right. Then I'll show you some other types of inputs in a minute, but a couple of things that every form needs is a submit button and a reset button. So we're just going to go to insert, form, and then down under, here, submit button. There it is. And then I put my cursor next to it, insert, form, reset button. Okay, now you'll notice in any of my inputs, whether they're text inputs or whether they're buttons, they're all inside the red box. That red box represents my form, right? So let's do two things. First, let's go over here and look at the code. So if we look at the code, we're seeing, here's my code for the field set. Here's the closing field set. So everything's contained within the field set. And all the field set does is draw a box on the page and allow you to add in a legend. And so the legend, that is the name of the form that appears as a headline on the form, is called form label. Okay, and then inside of that, we've got my actual form tag. Now you might remember that a form needs two things in order to be functional. It needs an action and a method. So my method here is post, which means when this data is submitted, it will be sent in a header, not in the URL in plain text, which is not secure. All right, but I'm missing an action. So I've got to go back to design view, select my red box. If I have trouble selecting it, I can use my little selector tags here. So I'm going to click on form. By default, it gave it the name form1 or ID form1. That's fine. As long as I remember it, it's fine. But what I'm missing is right here under action. Okay. Now, if you remember from the video from lynda.com, the action should be the pointer to the file that is the processing file. In my case, I'm going to use a PHP file that is just an easy little thing that I've created that is called welcome.php. But in order for PHP to work, the environment has to be set up. And so my environment is set up on the server. And my file, therefore, is on the server. And therefore, if my local HTML file is here on my desktop, but the handling script is on the server, then I've got to do a full absolute URL. http://cisco.estramountain.edu/Jim. Trying to remember my account. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think was the clever fake name I put on it, and then DW, and then my script is called welcome.php. You're welcome to use that same script. Since it's a URL that's publicly accessible, feel free to point your form to it as well. It's only going to handle the things that it's programmed to handle, but if you choose to use it, feel free. All right, so now if I go back and look at the code, now my form has an action and a method, and then my form has a name and ID. You'll see that there are name and ID tags all over the place, and this may look redundant. It is actually pretty redundant to have a name and an ID. And as far as I understand, the reasoning for that is one method, maybe an outdated method, used the name, and the other method used the ID, so they put them both in there, right? In this case, notice that there's a label. That's the text, the word's first name, and then there's the input, which is the field itself where the user will input their information. And so these two things we always want to be associated with each other. And so what happens is this ID name has to match this for name. And that marries these two things together so that the system always knows that these two things are related one to the other. So here's for last name to ID last name. Here, this is an input button. So this one, there isn't a label on it because its value shows up on screen. So we don't have to put a label on it at all. Okay, so that's what's happening in the code when we're putting this stuff on the page. Now, you've got some placeholder lines in design view. This red line is a placeholder line that shows you the container that is the form, and then this gray line is the placeholder line that represents the field set, which is just for formatting, right? But again, it is a placeholder. So let's pop over here to live view, and you'll notice that the thing looks a bit different. Once you I hate this thing. What was it? Alt-Shift-H. All right, I'm just turned off the code navigator so we can look at just what's on the page. All right, so notice a few things. My red box in live view, which is what the user would see in a browser, more or less, the red box disappears altogether, and then the gray box becomes a page element, a visual page element, with my form label inset into the top of the box. So that's the behavior of a field set. If we like it, we keep it. If we don't like it, we can get rid of it. We don't have to use a field set. It's not any part of the function, it's just for looks. All right. Okay, so let's go back to design view. And let's see, let's put in one more field. So I'm going to hit enter and go to insert form. This time we'll use email. All right, so email, because it's a special kind of an input, its label defaults to email, and its name over here defaults to email. So all is well. It's email, email, email. All right, I'm going to save my work right here, and I just wanted to show you some of this function. So if you remember how a form works, when a user enters their information into the fields and hits submit, the data is then sent from your HTML page to whatever is specified in your action, right? And it does it according to the method that's part of your method. So it's going to send my first name, my last name, and my email to this script. All right, let me give you a peek of the script. So here is a view of what's happening on the server. And I've got a file here in my directory called welcome.php. So if I do cat welcome.php, here's what it looks like. All right, so I know this is a code that you're not accustomed to, and it's not something that you'll be held accountable for in this class, but I just want to give you an idea how the handling script works. So there's some plain text here. You could consider this HTML. I could notice there's HTML and body and closing HTML. So it's not fully structured. It could be, but this one's not fully structured, just kind of a snippet, right? So here's some text that says welcome, and then there's this kind of a tag. And this is not an HTML tag, this is a PHP tag. So a PHP tag starts with $PHP and ends with question mark. So that's how we know the beginning and end of a PHP include. It's called a server-side include, right? And then echo is a code within PHP that says show what follows on the screen. All right, and what follows is the variable name, the variable called name. So that's what that line does, and then we have a BR, which is HTML, which is a line break. We go to the next line, and in HTML, we have the text your email address is, and then we have another PHP include. So it starts and ends with our question marks, and then echo once again means show the following on the page, and then we have the variable email, and then another line break. Okay, so the two things that this is going to show are variable name and variable email. If we go back to our form, you'll recall that this field set right here was named name. In the code, it is called name, right? And this one, by default, is called email. In the code, it's called email. So this name informs this variable. All right, so that's how it's able to pass data from the HTML page to the handling script. All right, so now if we go to Chrome, we can see our form in Chrome and we can fill it out. Oh, let me bring my view in here so that you can actually get it within the recording window. Sometimes I forget my recording window. I'm trying to get down to the corner so I can shrink it. And I'm not having luck, so I'm going to abandon that idea. And I'm simply going to put it up. Don't. It doesn't want to do it. All right. If I get too close to the top, it snaps. All right, there we go. That's good enough for what we're doing, okay? All right, so I'm putting the name Jim, last name Nichols, and when I get to email, I'll do Jim, and Chrome happens to remember my email address, so it wants to auto-populate it for me. All right, so if I put that in, I can hit the reset button, and it wipes it back out again. Okay, start over. Jim Nichols, email address. All right, so this time instead of hitting reset, I'm going to hit submit. When I hit submit, it's going to use the method, which I've identified as post, to send the data to the action, which I've identified as the script welcome.php on the server. So when I hit submit, you see the output of this script. This script said welcome name, welcome Jim. It said your email address is, and then email. Your email address is, and there's my email address. So that's an example, a very simple example, of how the PHP or any kind of server-side script is going to process the data that is forwarded to it by the form. Now, all this does is echo it back to the screen. But A more complex script can input those variables into a database. You can have like a MySQL database running side by side on the server, and so this PHP script can input that information into the database, and then it could do things like it could have some programming language built into the script such that if certain conditions are met, it goes and grabs information out of the database and or does like equations within the script, and then uses that data to populate a template and presents back to the user a brand new formatted HTML page with data that is specific, with content that is specific to their transaction. So it gives you a concept, kind of an idea about how forms are being dealt with on the back end. So they call that the back end as opposed to the user interface, which is called the front end. And it's also typically referred to as development rather than design. So what's happening with the server and PHP and server side includes and form handlers and stuff like that. All right, let's come back to our form and let's just focus on the front end for a little bit. I just want to, excuse me, cough. I want to show you a couple more types of inputs, right? So we can go up here to insert, and we could do form, and we could put in something like a radio group. I recognize that this is off screen because of my recording window. Okay, so insert, form, radio group. All right, now you notice I can do a radio button or I can do a radio group. Why would I choose one over the other? Well, a radio group is going to give me a group of related buttons. So I go to radio group and I get this cool little window right here to work in. So what I can do is I can name this group whatever I want to. In this case, I'll do gender. Okay, and so my first radio button I'm going to call male, and its value will be male. And my second radio button I'm going to call female, and its value would be female. And you might say, this is redundant. Why are you doing the same thing twice? Well, the label is what it shows on the screen, and the value is what it returns when you submit it. Most of the time, I would imagine, you're going to have the same information, but you could have different information. You could show on screen male, and when they click that, it actually submits to the server something like, I don't know, this guy's an idiot. I don't know, whatever you wanted it to say. So so the value could be different from the label if you wanted it to, I guess is my point. All right, so when I click OK, it shows up on the screen right here. Now, one thing that I'm missing is I don't really have, these are serving as my label. So I don't have anything that explains to the user what this is doing on the page. So I'm going to get my cursor in here and I'm going to call this gender. Male, female. All right, now in the code, I wanted to point out that what I've just done is put in this, well, this whole paragraph right here actually stops here. So this whole paragraph right here, and so I had a label called gender, and then my input is type radio, name gender, value male, and then the word male, which shows on screen. And then my second input is type radio, name gender, value female. Notice that these names are the same. That's what makes them a radio group. The recognition is that they're part of the same question. And you can choose the value male or you can choose the value female, but they're part of the same question. If they had different names, they'd be different questions. All right, so why do we care about that? Well, right now, let's pop over to live view. Right now, when we answer this question male, great. Oh wait, I made a mistake. I should have said female. So I click on female and male disappears. So it's a toggle button. It's one or the other. I could have 6 choices here, and if I click on one, all the others clear. You can only have one answer within a radio group. If they were different groups, I could have multiple answers because they're not related to each other. All right, so we're kind of similar. Let's go back to design view. Kind of similar. I could go to let's put in here I like, or sorry, you well, I guess if my perspective is I as the user filling out the form. Okay, so I like, and I can choose to insert. This time I'm going to insert form checkbox group. Okay, and this is going to be checkbox group called ice cream, and we'll have vanilla, we'll have chocolate, and we'll add one, strawberry. Okay, and say enter. And so just got to do a little bit of formatting. I'll put my cursor before this box and hit enter so they're all lined up nice. All right, so here, this is a checkbox group as opposed to a radio button group. What's the difference? Well, notice radio button groups are circles where a checkbox group is squares. And then also, the idea with a checkbox group is that the answers don't have to be mutually exclusive. So when I run this in live view, I can only be male or female, not both at the same time, according to this form. And then under I can like vanilla, but just because I like vanilla doesn't mean I don't like chocolate. So I can click on that too. Oh, and I also like strawberry. Today I don't really like chocolate, so I just like vanilla and strawberry. So I can click on any combination of buttons. They're not mutually exclusive, even though they're part of the same checkbox group. So when this would return the data to a server, it might say ice cream, and then the values are vanilla and chocolate and strawberry. I can have multiple answers to the same question. Okay, all right. Let's see. I don't want to overwhelm you with different input types. There are a variety of different input types. Let's just do maybe a couple more back in design view. After email, let's say that I'm logging into something, so I have a place that I need to enter my password. So I insert form, where to go? Password, right? And it just creates a new field and it's called password, and by default it's named password and everything's good. Only thing I want to show you on that is that when you go to live, password, as you enter the data, it automatically makes it bullets so that somebody can't read your password over your shoulder as the user is entering their information. So that's what's special about password. Let me also show you a tell me a story. Okay, in this case, we will insert form, looking for the right one, text area. Okay, in this case, our text area is specified by rows and columns. And so let's say columns, that's the area across. Let's say columns is 35. Okay, notice how it widened out a little bit. And apparently it came with its own label, so I'm going to take my tell me a story and I'm going to put it here where the label should be, just to stay within the label tags. And let's say I put that actual text block on the next line, and then I'll take my text area and let's make it bigger. Let's make it 150. Oh, that's way too long. Let's make it 50. All right, and then for rows, let's make it 5 rows. All right. So what this does is it creates a block where I can enter a more substantial amount of text. It's not just like a name or an email address. It's a longer block of text. And I can specify how big I want it to be. I can also specify a maximum length so that nothing shows up here. A maximum length so that it cuts people off at a certain amount of text. I can't put a 20-page report in here. I just want, a 2-sentence paragraph. And then value, I could say something like enter info here. Right. Okay, so enter info here shows up as the default text inside the text box. So if I say live view, when the user goes to fill this out, they'll put their cursor in here and they can get rid of the text that's already, they can't. They can't get rid of the text that's already in there because I put it in the wrong place. It's not supposed to be value. It's supposed to be placeholder. Sorry about that. All right. So now you can enter whatever you're going to enter, and that whole paragraph would be submitted to the form handler script when I hit submit. Okay, this is just a sampling of some of the different kinds of inputs you could put into a form. I recognize my video is getting a little long, but I just wanted to take a minute to show you a little bit of formatting. One thing that drives me crazy, because I'm just, a little bit too anal retentive, is that I hate how my input boxes are scattered all over the place. So one technique for organizing the data on your form, I'm going to put in a couple hard returns here just so I can insert a, looking for it, table. Okay, if I insert a table, it's going to ask me how many rows long do I want this to be. Let's see, I think I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows. And then how many columns do I want it to be? I'm going to go with 2, but I'm recognizing that I'm going to have a problem when I get to this text area. So I'm going to back up and I'm going to go 6 rows, 2 columns. And then how wide do I want my table to be in pixels? I'll go a little bit wider than that, maybe 350. And then border thickness, I'm going to set to 0 because I don't want to see a border. So cell padding and cell spacing you can specify. I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to get the default, which usually works pretty well for me. And just ignore the rest of this for now. You can put in a caption or a summary for accessibility so that screen readers would read these things to somebody who's using a screen reader software. I'm going to leave it alone for now just to get moving here. So I'm going to say OK, and I get a table. You might say, well, what in the world is that all about? All right, so my table is 350 pixels wide, and it just equally distributed my 2 columns. But I can click up here and drag, and I can change the width of the columns. Now I'm going to take my label, first name, I'm just going to highlight it, pick it up, put it in here. And then I'm going to take the associated field and pick it up and put it in there. And then I'm just going to keep doing that. Last name, oops, got to select it correctly. I'll put it in there. I take this, put it in there. Email goes here. This goes here. Password goes here. This goes here. Now I get to gender, different kind of an input, but no problem. Just put that there. Put these things there. Height of the row adjusts automatically. This is a vanilla thing. Put that here. And I can start deleting some of this. All right, and then I'll take this and I'll put it here. All right, now I recognized that my text area width is not necessarily going to be too friendly with my table, so I didn't mess with that. I left that alone. Okay, now one nice thing about this is now instead of having all these jagged starts to this left side of my table, now it all lines up real nice. I do have weird gaps here. So one way to deal with that is to take just this column. You could do this with a style, but I'm just going to do it with HTML formatting. Under Format, I can go to Align, and I can align that to the right. So now all of my labels line up to the right. Okay. If I want to take a look at how that looks, I can say Live, and notice how it all lines up. I personally like that. If you have any issues with it, a couple things you can do. I don't like how the word gender is in amongst these, and that just bothers me. So you can go to this table data cell, which is this TD. Notice what it highlights, and you can specify that you're going to have vertical alignment to the top, and the word gender moves to the top of the box. I'm going to do the same thing on this one to the top. Okay, and then I also feel like I got too much space in here, so let me get rid of that hard return and Live. All right, I like it. I like it. I like it. One thing about this is that my field set is too wide. So let's go back to Design, and then I can do some things in. Oh, let me bring my screen back up. Where'd that guy go? There we go. All right, a couple of things I can do in CSS. So with CSS, I'm going to create a new source, which is just define in page. I'm not going to. You could do an external style sheet for what I'm showing you right now. I'm not going to worry about it. So I'm going to add a new selector. I'm going to call this one .form. And then for properties, I'm going to set my width to maybe 350 pixels, 350 pixels. Okay, and then let's see, I can give it a background, maybe a background color. We'll just pick something, maybe something greenish. I'll just pick it off of this, and then I can maybe lighten it up a little bit. I don't want to overdo it. Okay, so that's a nice color. And then maybe my border for this thing. Oh, I like the rounded corners. That's an HTML5 feature. So my border radius, I'm going to set that to maybe 25 pixels. All right, and then my actual border I have to specify is going to be, say, 2 pixels wide, and the style is going to be solid, and the color, I just want it to be black, so I'll just choose black. Okay. All right. If I wanted to, while I'm in here, I could change my form text. So we could go with a font family of, I don't know, Baskerville. We could choose a font weight of bold. We could choose a font color. That's going to get ugly. I'm going to leave the font color alone to the default, which should be black. All right. So I set all these characteristics, and now what I haven't done yet is applied this class. So I'm going to click on my form, and here under class I'm going to choose form. Okay, and now I get this preview. I did something wrong. I'm going to undo. Here's what I did wrong. I applied it to my form, and that's the trick. My form is not my exterior bounding box. My exterior bounding box, if you recall, is my field set. So I click on field set and apply the class form. All right. Now, you might remember that I had rounded corners. Where are my rounded corners? Well, in order to see some of that stuff, you got to go to Design Live. All right. So once again, I'm turn off Code Navigator. So now I've got my rounded corners. I've got my background color. I've got my 2-point thick border. My form labels in there. I changed my font accordingly, and it's starting to look nice.